Hey there, Adirondack explorers. Welcome back to ADK Talks, where we dig into the people, places, and sometimes quirky questions we get, and all the things that make the Adirondacks unforgettable. Today, we're doing something a little different. We are opening our listener mailbag to you.
Can we really call it a bag? Isn't it more of a pouch or perhaps a satchel?
Yeah, I think so. And technically, it's not a physical bag. It's a digital.
It's a box.
Digital carry-on.
Mailbox.
But that's okay. We get a few questions a week. And hopefully this will spur more questions because we like to answer questions. And we get some really interesting ones. But the idea is that you, listener, write in with your thoughts, questions, comments, things you're curious about, even weird things, and we'll answer them here on the show for you.
Because if you're wondering, chances are someone is as well. And if not, we'll still talk about it because we go off on so many tangents. We'll answer pretty much everything you're looking for an answer to.
Exactly. So, grab your trail mix, your cup of coffee. Today we're going to, I hate when people use this term, but we're going to quote unquote unpack everything from blue lines to bear behinds. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So, okay, let's start with the first one. We had a listener, Gina from Hudson Falls, who...
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Gina. She wrote to us and said, you mentioned the blue line frequently, but can you define what that is for people who might not know? So, Steve, I think this one's right up your alley. Lay some Acker facts on Gina and our listeners.
Well, it's kind of interesting. First of all, I think we probably mentioned a lot of things we just take for granted everyone knows, but the blue line is an actual thing. It's the color of the line that the original map makers, and actually they were legislators back in the 1890s, 1892, I think the first map came out. And the blue line is the actual boundary of the Adirondack Park. And it can be confused a lot of times with just the name Adirondacks. It's not the definitive outline of where the Adirondacks are. It's just the state park that the Adirondacks are part of. And it encompasses some 6 million acres, basically, as we remind people weekly. And it's a mix of public and private land, various regulations. I said registration, but regulations that are more strict in land use for some private landowners than some would like. It goes so far as to regulate sign colors. I mean, if you want an interesting example, the signs in the park have to have a brownish yellowish mix of color that are noticeable if you look out for them. But there's a stretch of Route 11, State Route 11B, that runs from Potsdam to Malone. And for a short mile or two, it runs directly on the blue line. So that if you're traveling from Potsdam to Malone, the road signs on your right are the designated colors that the state requires for roadsides and street signs to be. But on the left-hand side of the road, they're the green color that you see most counties have. So you have opposite sides of the same road at the same exact place, 2 different signs for the naming of that intersecting road. And it's one of the strange little quirks of our beautiful Adirondack Park.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one before. I
discovered that a long time ago.
Yeah. As I sometimes have mentioned on the podcast, I lived in Kansas City, Missouri for a while, and literally there's a road called State Line Road that looks just like Route 9 in Warrensburg, and on one side of the road is Kansas, and on the other side of the road is Missouri. So it's the same thing. And I think what you said is important. It is I'm not going to say arbitrary blue line. It was purposeful in how it was constructed, but it doesn't mean the Adirondacks as a region, as a geological feature, don't stop and start there. We featured the Lowville Cream Cheese Festival that happens every year on the western edge of the Adirondacks. In Lowville, actually, we went to summer camp as kids close to there on Beaver Lake. Every year for the last couple of years, they have created the world's largest cheesecake. And so I posted about that. The world's largest cheesecake was made in the Adirondacks. And one commenter on, I think it was Facebook, really took issue with the fact that I placed it in the Adirondacks, because technically Lowville is outside the blue line, but it doesn't mean it's not part of the Adirondacks region. And the person actually got kind of snippy with me. Yeah, like, facts are important. And I'm like, well, guess what? Lowville
It is
still
a fact.
sits. It is a fact. Lowville still sits on land that has the same features of what makes the Adirondacks unique. So everyone needs to just calm down a little bit, and let's not get so parochial that you can't appreciate the forest for the trees, as it were.
I had stumbled across something. I was not even pursuing anything related to this, but it struck me, and that story reminded me of that story. And that at one time, a region of the northwestern Adirondacks, as it is described, and it's outside of the park, but it's still referred to by the federal government as the northwestern Adirondacks, is a small area near south of Governor, where they mine talc. And at one point, that was the largest talc mine. It might still be the largest talc area in the Western Hemisphere. But even the federal government recognizes that there are areas outside of the Adirondack Park that are part of the Adirondacks.
So, in summary, the blue line that bounds the Adirondack Park is a man-made designation, and the Adirondacks is more of a larger geological and cultural region.
Correct. I hope that answers. Yeah, we went off on a couple tangents there, didn't we? So, poor Gina.
Poor Gina. But it was a good question, Gina, and
but it was a good question.
We appreciate folks. We don't want to be an inside baseball. A lot of our listeners, most of our listeners, actually come from outside the park, from all over New York State and the Northeast to, as we've mentioned before, the Philippines and Frankfurt and other places. So keep us honest, or maybe not honest, but at least keep us grounded. So our next question comes from Tegan in New York City. And she says, what does Adirondack actually mean? Where did the phrase come from? And so, Steve, I'm going to turn this one back over to you again, because I know you'll keep us straight on this one.
Oh, I'll try. Well, the word Adirondack comes from the Mohawk language. The Native American Mohawk tribe was part of the Iroquois Federation. And supposedly the translation of Adirondack in Mohawk to English is those who eat trees, or rather, some often referred to bark eaters. It was originally a derogatory term to describe the Algonquin tribes that frequented the Adirondacks and reportedly had to eat bark during the harsh winters. And I'm really not sure how true that was. It might be a derogatory term because they just didn't like them and they wanted to make fun of them. Well, we know they didn't like them.
They didn't like them, and I think that they were trying to talk trash about the Algonquin tribe's prowess as hunters. So, they weren't good hunters, which, according to the Mohawk, forced them to eat the bark from trees. But you'll see bark eater, there's a bark eater there's bark eater chocolate.
A lot of references to bark eater.
Yeah, a lot of references to bark eater. So that's really where it comes from. Who actually gets the credit for naming the Adirondacks? Do you know?
Well, according to my social studies classes in the middle school.
Don't date us. Don't date us. Don't say the year.
As I recall, Ebenezer Emmons, and he was the state geologist. As I recall, he gets credit for formally naming the Adirondacks as the Adirondack Mountains in 1837-ish.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, as I recall, he led some kind of expedition up here, because I'm up here today. That's a rarity for us. And I guess somebody has to take credit for it, and he must have.
Yeah.
the term Adirondack, how it's used. I mean, we talked about bark eater, but there's also Adirondack chairs, Adirondack camps, and even some food branding. Adirondack pickles, and Saranac Brewery has done named a lot of its beers with the word Adirondack in it. It's a whole marketing phenomena.
It is. And sometimes you'll see it spelled without the K at the end.
Right. Yeah.
The Adirondack chair, here's some more nerdy trivia for you, is actually the Westport chair and was first crafted in Westport, New York. And I forget who did it, but that style of the slanting seat and back that's sort of like that, almost like a check mark or a V shape, became known as the Adirondack chair. And you sit in it, you're sitting in a bit of linguistic history, as it were.
And other regions have adopted it. Remember, we've been down to the Outer Banks, North Carolina, and they've marketed it. Same exact chair as a Carolina beach chair or something like along those lines.
Well, we know better.
Yes, we do.
All right, let's go to the next question. Takes us on a little bit different path. Jeff from Toms River, New Jersey, wrote in and said, I hear the phrase leave no trace a lot, but what does that actually mean? We've, I think, brought it up in some of our episodes with Adirondack Guides or the Search and Rescue Organization of the Northern Adirondacks. But it's really, I mean, Jeff, think about it. It's not that mysterious. And it's good common sense principles for experiencing the outdoors. And we'll go through what the leave no trace principles are, but really encourage anyone who's planning to spend time in the Adirondacks, especially if you're camping, hiking on the trails, visit lnt.org. That's Larry Normal Tango.org to learn more about these principles because they're really important. But in a nutshell, here are the principles. Number one, plan ahead and prepare. No duh. That means everything from knowing the regulations and rules for the place you're visiting to also being prepared for extreme conditions. As we know, the weather can change on a dime here. Depending on where you're hiking, it may feel like a summer day at the bottom of the trail, but once you get to the summit, you can experience a large drop in temperature. So be ready for that.
Yeah, rapidly changing weather.
Yeah, exactly. Travel and camp on durable surfaces. You really want to avoid damaging the land, stay on trails, use existing campsites.
Yeah, staying on the trails is important.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in the higher peaks and you're approaching the tree line and the mosses and
it's very delicate.
Lichen that are very delicate. It's the same principle as when you're at the beach. You don't go bounding around on the dunes. You stay so you're not messing up the dune grasses and the plants that are there. So it's important that people do that.
The third, dispose of your waste properly. And that means all your waste. If you bring it in, bring it out. And if you poop, do it in a cat hole. Those are, 6 to 8 inch deep hole and at least 200 feet from, water, bodies of water, campsites and trails, and, cover it up.
Yes, please.
Also, similar to camping on durable surfaces, leave what you find. Don't disturb historic structures or natural objects. Don't build new things or dig trenches. Don't, tag things with any kind of, paint or carve your initials into a tree. Just leave it as you found it.
Don't push boulders off the tops of mountains.
Exactly. Minimize campfire impact. This is really important. We've been lucky to not experience the horrible wildfires that, devastated parts of the West Coast and even up in Canada. But, be really careful with fire. Overuse of fire degrades the land and also demands more firewood, which means chopping down trees. So Leave No Trace really encourages people and campers to bring a lightweight stove for cooking. Then you're not going to be hassled if you have wet wood or wet conditions. You're going to have a ready-made fire. If you do make a fire, Do it in established fire rings, or sometimes in state campgrounds, you'll see those fire pans, and only do it where fires are permitted. Also be aware of if there are currently fire bans in the Adirondacks. We've had a very dry fall here, and there was a fire ban for a while. It may still be in effect, but be aware. So again, if you think you're going to be building a fire, definitely visit lnt.org to learn what you need to know before you spark up.
And Jane, might there be a link to lnt.org in the show notes at the end of this show?
You know it, Steve. You know it.
Such a good idea.
As we always say, check the show notes for links to this stuff. I can't stand it when I listen to a podcast and they're recommending stuff or mentioning stuff. And then you've got to remember, a lot of times I listen to podcasts when I'm driving and I'm, hands-free. All right, let's wrap this up. So the last two, leave no trace principles, respect the wildlife. Again, no duh. Observe animals from a distance and never feed them.
Leave that picnic basket at home, boo-boo.
That's right. It's not good for their health. They should not be eating Cheetos or Fritos or any of the horrible things that we eat that we shouldn't be eating either. And it also alters their natural behavior. And we talked about this with the loon folks from the Adirondack Center for Loon Conservation. Don't feed any kind of animals. If they become dependent on humans, it's really bad for them. So keep your food to yourself. And last but not least, just be considerate of others. Be nice. Don't make a ruckus at your campsite that might disturb other people. If you see people on the trail, be courteous. That's sort of a principle of no matter where you are. If you're you're climbing Mount Marcy or you're in Madison Square Garden, just be freaking nice. It takes such little effort. And that's it in a nutshell. Do you have anything of a trace you left behind that you wish you hadn't, or any good story?
I've always been good about bringing back everything I've taken in, but I recall probably when I was, in high school, going hiking with Dad and a couple of our friends, and we met at a parking area. I think it was on our way into Placid there, but they wanted to hike along the stream, and they didn't know the name of the stream, but they had found a pair of BVD underwear hanging from a branch when they first found the place. And so the part of the stream that was to the left of the road, as you looked facing west, was upper BVD, and part of the stream below the road was lower BVD. And
okay, what is BV? Like, talk about inside baseball. I haven't heard the term BVD.
It was a brand of underwear.
Of men's underwear.
Men's underwear.
Your BVDs, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, God, I haven't heard that term in a bajillion years, but I remember with that was the Murphys. We hiked the lower BVD and the upper BVD. I remember that.
Yes, it was.
Switching gears, we got a little inside baseball question. Tyler in Albany asked us, how do you find your guests?
Usually at gunpoint, but that's a whole different story.
Steve, that's not nice. So Tyler, I wish there was a strategic answer. There probably should be a strategic answer, but it's really started when our first couple of episodes were just things that we were interested in. One of our first guests, Paul Nazrani, from the CEO and founder of Adirondack Creamery, his wife was my attorney. And when we first got to know each other, we found out we had all these things in common. And she told me his story. It's a great story. If you want to go back, it's one of our first episodes, how somebody went from being the CFO at a mid-sized firm in Manhattan to becoming a ice cream maker. But they're things that we find interesting. And, I guess we are so self-centered that we think what we think is interesting, other people will think is interesting. I would say that one of the bigger challenges that I'm kind of getting over is thinking sort of anti-seasonally. And what I mean by that is a lot of times in the summer, I want to talk to people in places that are very popular in the summer. Well, people don't have time during those times of year. And then in the winter, I want to talk to the ski resort people, and they're busy. So I'm trying to get better at thinking, okay, I should reach out to the ski people in late summer and reach out to,
Summer people in winter.
or the Lake George Steamboat Company, for example, or Racket Lake Navigation, probably in the off season as well. And Steve suggests people all the time.
Yeah.
Our biggest surprises, and Steve, weigh in on this too, was we started with the Bigfoot Festival and Sasquatch Calling Festival in Whitehall, New York, which is actually a hub of Bigfoot activity. And just because we thought it was a really kind of cool thing. It literally is our most downloaded episode, thousands of downloads.
It's got staying power.
It's got a ton of staying power. It's been over a year since we recorded it. And our Bigfoot content, on adktaste.com, we've a couple of articles about Bigfoot sightings in the Adirondacks. People like Bigfoot. And then ghosts. We just did 2 weeks ago. We did, I think, our third episode on the paranormal in the Adirondacks. We had the Adirondack Paranormal Society on. They were great. That was actually one of our longest episodes. They had a lot of really just cool stuff about ghosts and paranormal activity, but also what you do as a ghost hunter, how you actually go about doing that. And I thought that was fascinating. That's not a big personal interest of mine, or I think yours, Steve, but I actually really enjoy those episodes, and they also blend a lot of history into it too, because of all the different things that have happened here.
To put it in a nutshell, when we're looking for subject matter or guests, if they have a good story and a view of the mountains, they're on our radar, or we will seek it out.
And we've had people approach us too. I would just say this, and we welcome that. If you think you've got a great story to tell, please reach out to us. It's not pay to play. So if you're on the podcast, it's either because we know about you, your organization, we think it's worth telling that story to a larger audience. But there's no pay to play sponsorship involved. And we think that kind of contributes to the integrity of what we're doing.
Well, how we research or come across some of these is often guests talking about the things that they love to do. And their gem of the Adirondacks, and sometimes our conversations with them following an interview, we oftentimes will get 2 or 3 ideas for shows.
100%.
If you have a suggestion, feel free to send us an email.
Yeah, when we have some really good ones coming up, we're going to talk to folks from Paul Smith's College, the Adirondack Harvest Organization, a couple of really good things. Steve and I are going to do a little Home for the Holidays edition, give you tips on things to do if you're going to be up here, over Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, New Year's, my birthday.
Jane's birthday.
Exactly. So, write us in. Again, our email address is info@adktaste.com. Go on our website. You can see all of our past episodes under the news section of our website. And, if you're listening to this, you've probably found us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. We actually have the audio on YouTube as well. And go back and take a listen. Most of the episodes are pretty evergreen. And even if things like, we had the Sembrick on, or the Seagull Festival and Lake Placid Film Festival, even those seasons have passed, you'll get lots of great information about those organizations. And we hope to have them back next summer as well. All right. So let's get into maybe stuff that's a little bit on the fringe, a little bit of the weird stuff. Steve, no music necessary.
Stop it.
Chris from Croton-on-Hudson, which is down in Westchester County, right on the Hudson, as the name implies, wrote in with a really interesting question that we actually had to do some research on. He asked, I assume Chris is a he, are there any nudist colonies in the Adirondacks?
I've actually looked this one up myself, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know you.
Out of curiosity.
You like the clothing optional places. And again, if you're listening to this and you know of a nudist colony, please feel free to let us know about it. We could not find any. So I would say, given the wilderness that's here, there are remote places to camp, and maybe you can have your own clothing optional experience.
There's definitely a place we know where someone took off their BVDs. So
Exactly.
and it's not unheard of if you talk to enough people, I think everyone's got a story about hiking somewhere on a early fall day when kids are back in school and people are at work and rounding a bend and they're swimming in the lake, or a couple people who didn't bring their bathing suits and are just enjoying the warm afternoon sunshine. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as
you're respecting other people who may not.
Respecting other people. I've been swimming in the Hudson up when we used to go tubing and with masks and did a little snorkeling. And I looked up towards the surface, and sure enough, someone was just doing the breaststroke right past me.
Letting it all hang out.
Yep, letting it all hang out.
Yeah. So, if that's your bag, there's probably plenty of places you can do it where there may not be other people around. And I don't mean that you have to do it in private, but be respectful of families who may not want to be exposed to your exposure.
And let you be exposed to your exposure. And let's also remember, part of planning is remembering the sunscreen. Don't do it in black fly season. That's
you don't want any black fly bites on your naughty bits. So I guess that's how we answer that question. And again, anyone who knows of a nudist colony in the Adirondacks, please let us know about it. We'd love to hear about it. All right. Julie from Kansas City also asked, can I stay at a great camp? Are there any that are still in the hands of individuals and families? That's a great two-part question.
And the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
To both.
If you want to stay at a great camp, there are several options, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a Great Camp Sagamore, who we've had on the podcast, and that's another great episode to take a listen to. They're open May through October. You can actually stay there and see what it was like for, to stay there during not just the Vanderbilt era, but really when Margaret Emerson, who inherited that place from Alfred Vanderbilt, really created an incredible experience there. They also offer lots of different programs. We've been talking to them, and we're going to have them on after the first of the year to talk about some of the upcoming programs that they have for 2026, but they do some really cool writers retreats. They do paddling retreats. They do music sessions. It's near Racket Lake in the central Adirondacks. And they've got a great restaurant. If you just go and visit the camp for the day, you can have lunch in their dining room, and they often have, wine dinners or beer dinners they had last year. So check it out. And all that stuff tends to sell out quickly. So I highly encourage you to go to their website and subscribe to their newsletter. What are some of the other places, Steve, that I'm not thinking of?
The Point on Saranac Lake?
That is the former camp of the Rockefellers. And if you are into high-end luxury experiences, I would point you to The Point. You can read more about it on adktaste.com. Yeah, Architectural Digest has named it one of the 7 most beautiful places to stay in the Adirondacks. It's really gorgeous. Lake Cora is another super high-end luxury property. That's more a camp that they have different buildings that they make available for rentals. I think Jim Carrey has stayed there and some other famous people. You have to email them to inquire about it, but it's a beautiful spot as well. And then there's the Hedges on Blue Mountain Lake. That's super charming, and they have both individual cabins as well as rooms in their main lodge and a beautiful dining room. It's, an all-inclusive kind of thing. And Blue Mountain Lake is really one of the prettiest spots in the Adirondacks. And then White Pine Camp, which is up near Paul Smith's, which offers lovely cabins and cottages. And I think wasn't that called the Wilderness White House or something? Didn't Calvin Coolidge come there?
Yeah, that's, as I recall, I believe was it Coolidge? Yeah, the Wilderness White House.
I think it was Coolidge. If not, we'll have to have a corrections corner next week.
Somebody will correct
Somebody,
us.
yeah, right. If we get anything wrong.
Facts! You gotta get the facts! Facts are facts!
Exactly. You can, don't go all mental on us like that woman that person on Facebook, but definitely. I mean, that's the one thing I still can't get used to about dealing with this is the people, the trolls, the people who are so quick to point out, you're wrong. Like, get a life. Also, answer your question, Julie, there are still a number of properties that are in private hands. You can tour them on certain days when they make certain agreements with organizations like Adirondack Architectural Heritage, who we've also had on the podcast. But to name a couple of them, there's Camp Uncas, which is near Great Camp Sagamore. It was owned by J.P. Morgan. It's over the years has changed hands several times and now is privately owned. Top Ridge, which was once owned by Marjorie Merriweather Post, the original owner of Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. And that's changed hands a couple of times. It was owned by the state at one time, but now Texas real estate baron and Justice Clarence Thomas, good buddy, Harlan Crow owns it. And in fact, Justice Thomas is allegedly a regular guest there. And then there's Camp Wild Air on Upper St. Regis, is still owned by the descendants of the original owners. And here's a little trivia for you that I came across as I was researching this question. The main lodge was designed by the famous New York architectural firm McKim, Mead, and White, who are famous for designing the original Penn Station, the buildings at Columbia University, the Museum of Natural History, the West Wing of the White House, and a lot more. And I was sort of surprised because I think it's, if not the only one of the first rustic buildings that they ever designed. But there's some, Google that and you can see some cool facts about that.
Yeah. And I think we should also mention that there is a former great camp that's available to everyone for free. If you don't mind taking a 5-mile hike or renting a horse-drawn
carriage
wagon. I had to think of what that was.
Yeah.
Great Camp Santanoni.
The horse-drawn wagon rides are generally in the spring, fall, and summer. You can snowshoe in, you can cross-country ski in, you can mountain bike in any time of year. But as Steve said, it is about 4 miles in and 4 miles out. So just be prepared. Go back to those leave no trace principles.
It's a road you go in on. It's not a very difficult 4 miles, but it's enjoyable. There are things to see along the way and stop at. It's a pleasurable afternoon or a whole day.
Yep.
In the summertime, there are DEC employees. I think they're DEC or Department of Parks interns who are interpretive, help you explain the whole place. It's well worth it and doesn't cost them.
And they do usually 3 winter weekends around the Martin Luther King long weekend, President's Day weekend, and then sometime usually mid-March. So we try and make sure those are listed in the events section of our website. But just Google Great Camp Santanoni and you can get that information as well. So that's it for the mailbag right now. But listener, as we have said numerous times during this episode, if there's something about the Adirondacks that makes you scratch your head or sparks curiosity, send it our way.
Or something you hear on one of our interviews, send it your way. You can email us, DM us, send a carrier pigeon if it doesn't get shot at. Whatever you would like, whatever works for you. Just please don't carve it into a tree because we won't see it.
We won't see it, and it's not good for the tree either.
No.
And if you're lucky, we'll feature your question on a future mailbag episode. And who knows, your curiosity might just inspire our next guest. I'll tell you what, Steve, let's do this. This is just on a whim. I'm going to add this. If you send us a question and we feature it on our podcast, you will receive an ADK Talks friend of the pod water bottle, which is not available in our merch store. We only hand those out to special guests. But I'm going to lay down that challenge. Send us a question. If we read it on the next Mailbag podcast, we will send you some cool ADK Talks swag.
And unlike public radio, you don't even have to send us money.
Exactly.
Please remember that our email address so that you can send that in. It's info@adktaste.com.
And you can also message us through our social media profiles on Instagram, Facebook, and the ADK Taste profile is on LinkedIn. I think we have about 3 followers there, but I think I'm going to be posting a little bit more to LinkedIn because we have so many interesting guests. This week, we spoke with Kier Weimer from Weekender Hotels. He is the CEO of that organization, and they are doing some really cool things with kind of legacy properties. If you've been to Old Forge, the Great Pines Lodge, which is originally built or has had a hotel or lodging place operating there since the late 1800s, Weekender takes these properties and modernizes them, preserves some of the original charm, but does great stuff like high-end linens, nice amenities, Wi-Fi, some contactless check-in. So you just get a code and you punch that in, which I personally love. But, he talks about what it's like to build a business. Or when we had the folks from Hornbeck Boats, Josh, the new CEO, took over from Pete Hornbeck, the originator of those amazing watercrafts. The part of the story is also how to make a living in the Adirondacks too, which has relevancy to LinkedIn. So, okay, that was a bit of a tangent. I apologize for that. So, listeners, thank you for joining us on this inaugural ADK Talks mailbag. From blue lines to bearskin, we've covered a lot of ground, responsibly, of course.
I think this is our second mailbag, but I'm not sure. We've done it somewhere.
I think we kind of did it.
We kind of did it.
We kind of did it, but we focused in on one specific region.
That's very true.
I think that's how we did our first, Lake Placid. Yeah.
So, if you've enjoyed the ride, please rate and review ADK Talks. It really helps more listeners discover the voices and vistas that we love.
For more Adirondack stories, insider tips, and ideas for your next adventure, visit adktaste.com and subscribe to our newsletter so you never miss the latest update.
Absolutely.
And with that, this episode is coming to an end. Trail tested and ADK Talks.
Trail tested and ADK Talks approved.
That's right. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you again on the next podcast.
Bye-bye.